Good morning, Maddie. We got two more stories to read and then we are done with Expat Days by Steve Rosse. Thank you for sticking with me this far. You know, it might be a dopey reading today. I got 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep last night. That happens once or twice a year, if that. And I thank edible cannabis for that very pleasant sleep. But it leaves me a little woozy in the morning. It's a good feeling. I feel thoroughly rested. I feel compass menti, but kind of dragging ass a little bit. Let's see if caffeine doesn't help. Another time, another place. Here's an example of, it's Thursday, Steve's got to submit 1,000 words to pay the rent. What's he going to write about? Happily, every now and then the calendar hands you a special date that you will share with your readers. Everybody does something on New Year's Eve. So you write about your New Year's Eve. Another time, another place. A columnist has only 2 choices for material at the new year. Quote, a look back, or quote, a look ahead. So last Wednesday, I took a glance both ways during a walk along Kata Beach, my original home in Phuket. My first year on the island, I left Kata Beach only 4 times, and then only to renew my visas. Since then, I've gone back to the restaurants and hotels on Kata only a few times each year, and then almost always at night. The first thing I noticed on Wednesday afternoon was that the beach was crowded. The second thing I noticed was that most of the people on the beach were nearly naked. Maybe another man's attention would have been taken by the brilliant blue sky or the sparkling white sands. But you have to remember that I live in a very repressed society. I don't know why Europeans feel compelled to expose themselves on the beach. The bright sunlight reveals every bulge of fat, every wrinkle, pimple, wart, patch of body hair, splotch of eczema, and dimple of cellulite. Nowhere is the human body more unattractive than on the beach. If I happen to pass a woman whose body deserves, and I've never understood the sexual etiquette of the nude beach. If I happen to pass a woman whose body deserves public exposure, am I allowed to stare? I saw one woman changing her bathing suit under a sarong that her companion gallantly held suspended around her hips. Why does she bother to cover her body below the waist, but not above? Outside the bluff and austere cliff of the Kata Beach resort, there was one couple, both spread-eagled across their chairs, both asleep, and evidently that way for hours, pale as ghosts where their backs showed, but red as Russian October on their fronts. I hope they weren't here on their honeymoon, because they wouldn't be enjoying any bodily contact for at least a week. Every 50 meters or so, there would be a mixed race couple, a tourist and a Thai woman, whose years in the bars had so removed her from normal Thai life that she exposed her skin to direct sunlight. For some reason, this disturbs me more than seeing these same women dancing naked in the bars. Asia has a long history of dancing girls, concubines, and common prostitutes. But for 5,000 years, the women have suffered stoop labor in the rice fields, wrapped in cloth from head to crown. from head to crown. From head to crown. The crown is the head, Steve. What the heck were you thinking? This story's probably appeared in 3 or 4 newspapers, and I never noticed that. Don't know if the editors ever caught it. From head to toe. There is something terribly hopeless and defeated about a Thai woman who exposes her breasts to the sun. Yeah. That, of everything these women do for their customers with a smile on their face, even though they probably hate it, being, PDA, public displays of affection, or having to dress provocatively, or even like this, be naked from the waist up on the beach. That seems terribly, terribly demeaning in Thai culture, and depressing to me that these women would demean themselves for a paycheck for this guy. And they'll get him for it. When they're alone in the bathroom, they'll take his toothbrush and rub it on their butthole and put it back in the cup, and never tell him, of course. And they'll just know that he's eating their shit when he brushes his teeth. And that exposure in the bars, that seems normal to me. And public displays of affection, you see guys put their hands on women in public, out in the mall, not in the bar, but out on the beach, in the mall, just holding hands, crossing a street. She doesn't want to do that. She doesn't want to tell the world that she's got this relationship with you. She certainly would never touch a man that way publicly at home. And that kind of display, that I think must be harder for these women than anything they do in the bedroom or anything they do in the bar, because this is in public, and public face is everything, everything. And my God, you're painting a target on your back if you put your hands. I saw this couple I saw a movie on Phuket recently, well, maybe 5 months ago. And waiting for the movie out in the lobby, there was a tourist with a bar girl. It was like 2 PM in the mall. And he's got his arms around her, and he's kind of, brushing her breast with his fingertips. And he's got one hand on her thigh. And she's dressed provocatively the way the men like it. And I thought, Jesus, she's going to get you, dude. She's going to fuck you up somehow. And then brag to all her friends about how she did that. Anyway. I digress. The Club Med, if you remember from our last episode, Steve is walking on Kata Beach at the new year. The Club Med is the midpoint of the beach, and the only big chain resort that was here when I used to live on Kata. I stopped and turned my eyes to the sea. The traffic congestion on the bay was worse than in Phuket town at 4:30 on the last Friday before a holiday weekend. There were at least 50 jet skis using swimmers as slalom posts, 30 long-tail boats riding at anchor, waiting for somebody to put them on a postcard, 3 dozen windsurfers falling over, getting up, falling over, getting up, 6 luxury yachts left over from the King's Cup Regatta, 2 parasailing speedboats dragging their ICU candidates back and forth, and about 1,000 swimmers making the decision to just pee where they were rather than trek all the way back up the beach to the hotel bathrooms, which would only pipe it back out into the bay anyway. At the end of the Club Med's property is a little patch of casuarina forest where for decades, or maybe for centuries, the boatmen have pulled their craft up under the trees for caulking in the monsoons. Under one of their shelters was a Farang man with beet red shoulders and white hair, puffing hungrily on a krong tip and feeling up his local girlfriend. The fact that he wasn't wearing a shirt told me that he hadn't lived here long, and yet he had a gold chain around his neck with 6 or 7 big fat gold Buddha amulets hanging between flaccid pectorals. That, at least, hasn't changed. The new boy still thinks he can go native simply by buying a piece of gaudy jewelry, like the Pat Pong bar owner who thinks putting his touts in bow ties gives the place some class. I got to the northern end of the beach, where the naked granite spine of the island is laced at the high tide mark with the roots of century-old trees, and a little channel comes down out of the hills to meet the sea. That little channel is a filthy sewer now. I've probably smoked 1 million cigarettes under those trees, true, watching the local kids whose grandfathers used to dam up the sea at low tide to sift for tin ore, catching crabs in the stream. The children were catching crabs in the stream. That's a very poorly constructed sentence. But there are no more crabs now. So no more kids. And the stream is littered with trash after passing by the new bars and restaurants in Kata Center. Yeah, it's pretty gross now. But on that bit of land where the Casuarina Forest used to be is a lifeguard station, which wasn't there before Patty Smith, the local Peace Corps volunteer, made herself kind of a thorn in the sides of local authorities for years, back in the 80s. And she got them to institute lifeguards on the beach. And now these lifeguards are pulling at least one tourist out of the water every week. And losing at least one every week. At least one tourist dies every week on average on Phuket, either on a motorcycle or in the sea. But Patty, of all the Farang in Thailand who come here and do this and that, Patty had a real lasting, beneficial change on Phuket. And she was only there, I think, 3 or 4 years. And then the Peace Corps moved her on. She was public health, and she was supposed to be fighting AIDS among the Burmese labor community. And while she was doing that, she promoted the idea of lifeguards, permanent lifeguards, and the red flags. And even so, 1 tourist a week drowns in the high season, in the monsoon season. So anyway, I was talking about kids catching crabs. It's those kids grown up now who put the Coke cans into this little narrow stream, and the plastic bags and the bottles and God knows what else, until the water stinks of diesel fuel. This was back then. And wading through it leaves my feet itchy for an hour. I sat down on a boulder, lit a smoke, and looked back southward. And that's when I saw the future facing me, bulging out of the side of the mountain like a goiter, were the Kata condominiums, victims of the Sopokko Sisunung debacle. They are the only construction on Kata above the tree line, without glass in their windows or paint on their walls, and they are never likely to be completed. They will simply loom over the beach until, after a couple of decades of monsoon rains and human neglect, they come sliding down the mountainside to crush a dive shop or two. The mountains, sea, and sky haven't changed. But in the relatively short time that I've been here, 5, 6 years at this point, almost everything between them has changed. As I added my cigarette butt to the trash in the stream, I was certain that soon enough, the naked tourists would be gone, and the crabs and the kids would come back. Well, let's say Steve was indulging in wishful thinking rather than actually predicting the future. Obviously, the Kata Daman, whatever they are called now, did not come sliding down the mountain. everything looming over Kata Beach at the moment has glass in its windows and paint and on its walls and residents in its condos. And there are many, many, many developments above the tree line. So, things get built on Phuket within sight of the ocean. Someone's going to build a house there and rent it to somebody. So, but that stream, my God, it's still filthy. It's just, yeah, anyway. This is the last story in Expat Days. We made it. Sometimes a great notion. Though Thais generally tolerate the tourists, most expatriate residents of Phuket do not like them. The 4 million foreign visitors to the island each year, what is that number now? 9? I don't know, 9 million? The 4 million foreign visitors to the island each year leave an impression that they are crude, boorish, and ill-mannered, given to drunkenness and thievery, and worst of all, arguing about the price of things. We who live here must suffer with that negative impression each time we go to the market, or take a bus, or attend a dinner party. Here's an example of why expats won't talk to tourists and why the Thais consider them to be the world's largest traveling circus, made up entirely of clowns who throw money at the audience. You know, I will say there's a guy on this beach named Levi, an American guy. And Levi and I have a history. We had a physical altercation once, nothing very serious. 2 old men bitch slapping each other in the middle of the street in front of everybody. Nobody was hurt, feelings were hurt. And for a while, we glared at each other from our motorcycles when we would pass on the road. It's a small village. We see each other, I don't know, almost every day. But lately, he's got this dog. It's a rescue dog, a wounded military dog from Ukraine. It's a husky, beautiful animal. Must be miserable in this heat. I think I'd shave a husky in this heat. But an incredibly well-mannered and well-trained dog, a military dog. And he rides around on Levi's motorcycle with Levi. And Levi will go province to province. He'll go on road trips with this dog standing on his motorcycle. And it's a joy to see. Man and dog. It's very, not Jack Kerouac, Jack London. He's from Alaska, Levi is. So anyway, recently I've been complimenting his dog, and we've been talking about the dog, and we have found a détente. We have come to a peace between us. Like I said, we see each other every day, and how long can you carry a grudge? How long can you keep glaring at the same guy every day before that glare just loses all venom? And the first time I ever met him, I was brand new here, and I was doing a YouTube channel, and I was running around with my camera, bothering everybody with my camera, and I see this white guy on his motorcycle on the street, and I come rushing up to him, put the camera in his face. Hey, I'm Steve Rosse. I got a YouTube channel. I was asking every Falang I met, do you use the bum gun? That was going to be the theme of that week's video. So I come rushing up to him and jump him with this camera. And he says, I live here because I don't want to talk to Farang. And he guns it, and he shoots out into traffic without looking. He's so anxious to be away from Steve Rosse. He shoots out into traffic. Those were his first words ever to me. I live here because I don't want to talk to Farang. And here I was, 30 years ago saying in the newspaper, I don't want to talk to Farang. So me and Levi probably have a lot more in common than we have difference. I should offer him some brownies. I don't know if he smokes. He's got a ponytail. Maybe he's an old hippie like me. Maybe he'd like some pot brownies. I've got tons of them. This guy sent me this huge box of cheap weed, and I'm making brownies for days out of it. Maybe I'll offer Levi a couple brownies. I don't know. Maybe I'm assuming. But nobody, once you've been here a while, you don't want to talk to tourists. you know. Here's an example of why expats don't talk to tourists and why the Thais consider them to be the world's largest traveling circus, made up entirely of clowns who throw money at the audience. That line got some good email. I'm proud of that line. I like that line. One day, a long time ago, a tourist woke up on the last day of a 3-month holiday on Phuket. He'd spent the whole 3 months in the bars and the brothels. He had one of those dangerous rented motorcycles and a bored bar girl to ride pillion. On his last morning on the island, he decided to take a road trip. Leaving his supercargo snoring into her pillow, he got on the main highway and headed north. He went by the old beach road, which you could only travel on a dirt bike in those days, stopping frequently to stare out at the sea and think. At Nayang, he stopped for a swim, and while he was floating on his back in the still water, staring up at the crescent of jungle-shrouded hills and amethyst sky, he decided he loved Phuket so much he would come back to live here. He thought he'd like to own a bar and spend his days in a hammock drinking out of a coconut shell while his pillion rider rubbed his feet. The decision elated him, and he got back on the main road south with only a little gas left in his tank, but a song in his heart. Just after passing the Heroines Monument, he saw the golden spires of Wat Ta Rua, and on an inspiration decided to go in and make a little merit to celebrate his life-altering decision. He'd seen the bar girls lighting incense at their little Buddha shrines each evening, and his pillion rider had actually taught him how to chant Namo Tassa. He parked his big, loud, ugly bike next to the Wihan and stepped inside, actually the boat, not the Wihan, being careful to remove his shoes first. It was just after 11 a.m. and the monks were all sitting down to their daily meal inside their kutis. So the compound was deserted. Dressed in a pair of bathing trunks and a fanny pack and nothing else, the tourist approached the presiding Buddha image. He knelt before the big golden statue. He touched his forehead to the floor 3 times, selected 3 sticks of incense from the brass bowl, and lit them. He held them to his forehead and knelt before the Buddha, praying for success in his new life. He stuck the incense into the brazier and walked out, feeling enormously proud of himself. He took 10 baht out of his fanny pack, and he was looking for someplace to put it when he noticed the monk. The monk was striding toward the tourist so fast his robes were snapping in the wind. His face was livid with rage. The tourist thought, wow, I wonder what could be so bad it makes a monk display open anger like that. But at least now I know what to do with my 10 baht. The tourist approached the monk with the money held out in one hand, but the monk slapped the money away and it fluttered to the ground. The monk shook his finger in front of the tourist's nose and in very good English told him that by entering the temple nearly naked, he had committed a grievous sin and insulted the Buddha. Though the tourist towered over the monk and outweighed him by probably 100 pounds, he felt very small. The tourist apologized, explained why he'd wanted to come into the temple, and asked what he could do to make amends. The monk's attitude immediately softened, and he sat down with the tourist under the shade of a tree and explained some of the tenets of Buddhism. They spent most of an hour there, and it was a long time later that the tourist realized the monk had sacrificed his one daily meal in order to sit under the tree and teach him. Nobody picked the 10 baht out of the dust. It might still be there. The tourist went home the next day, but the shame he felt on the grounds of Wat Tara never left him. He spent a year wrapping up his affairs before moving back to Phuket. And during that time, he studied the Dharma, meditation, and the Thai language at a local Thai Buddhist temple. He checked books out of a library and studied Thai history, arts, and culture. He was sending money to his pillion rider, and she wrote him a letter a week in Thai. Since these letters were full of tender endearments, he was embarrassed to have them translated. So he taught himself to read Thai, letter by letter, character by character. He sent her money for a year, and when he returned, he discovered that she'd still been working in the bars all that time, so he left her. It cost him 10,000 baht per month to learn to read Thai, but learn he did. The tourist came back to Phuket as he had promised himself that day on Nayang Beach. But he didn't buy a bar. He knew by then that Phuket has more than enough bars, more than enough of the kind of tourist who hangs around in bars, and far too many bored pillion riders. He found other ways to make a living, and he's here still, married with a couple of kids, paying his taxes and supporting the local economy. He still loves Phuket, and he still learns something new about the place every day. At some point, he began to write about what he was learning, and eventually somebody decided to publish what he'd written in a book. In fact, you've just finished reading that book. Oh, it was Steve all along. Yeah. So yeah, that was my, all of that. That's just a record of something that happened. There's a longer version of this somewhere where I describe there was a Luknain, there was a little boy, a little Dekwat. You know, it used to be they didn't have orphanages. If you were a girl child, you got adopted by a family because you would work. You could be put to work on the farm. Boy children were pretty useless until they were adults. So boy children were sent to the temple where they could be fed and clothed and learn to read and write and maybe decide to spend their life in the monkhood. Plenty of monks used to be Luknain. Now, I don't know, now there are actual orphanages. But at any rate, there was a Luknain, this little kid who was with the monk, and he never spoke, this kid, but he grinned at me the whole time because I was catching flack from the guy who's usually disciplining the Luknain, the senior monk. And this kid was just loving that. This kid he was grinning at me. He thought this was the funniest thing, this big fat pale Farang being chewed out by this tiny little monk. So yeah, that's the end of Expat Days. And in 97 we went back to the United States, and the shit hit the fan, and everything went to hell, and my writing turned dark. What little writing I was doing. It was virtually impossible for me to write in America. And I always blamed America on that for 25 years. Now I'm back in Thailand. I haven't written a word in 3 years, and I don't miss it. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I played with YouTube for a couple of years, and now I make these turtles, and that's enough creativity for me. At 68, walk on the beach, pick up trash, make a turtle, take a shower, smoke some weed, go eat dinner, go to bed. Yeah, I don't need to write any longer. But the next book we will read is She Kept the Bar Between Them. And the story behind that book, since this is only half an hour, and And I reckon you've got all day, Maddie. So in 2009, I came to Thailand for 2 weeks. My 50th birthday was 2007. And my mother said, man, you're tense. You know what you could use? You could use time in Thailand. So she bought me for my 50th birthday a round trip ticket to Thailand. But that same year, 2007, I was offered a job that I couldn't turn down, paid too much money. So I took that job, and then I came back to America. I got another job. I couldn't take vacation for the first year. Finally, in 2009, I was able to use that round trip ticket. So I came to Thailand for 2 weeks. The first time I was back since 97. So 11 years, 12 years, I'd been away, and I came back, and I spent, it was a psychic shock, Maddie. It was a kick in the nuts. For whatever reason, coming back to Thailand that first trip, I couldn't deal with it. I spent a week in the Nana Hotel in Bangkok, just shacked up with this string of girls and a bag of weed, afraid to leave the room. I mean, I was housebound for 4 years with social anxiety disorder, and I thought by 2009 I was over it. I had gone to work at the VA. I was out of my house every day. I was talking to people without a panic attack. But in 2009, being back in Thailand, I just shut down, and I spent a week in the Nana Hotel with company, and then I got tired of the company, and I went to Koh Samui, and Koh Samui overwhelmed me, and I went to Koh Phangan, and I got this little bungalow in a dinky little bungalow joint and on the beach, and I found a copy of Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, a 600-page novel, and another bag of weed, and I just self-medicated in that bungalow, and walked on the beach and read that book, and walked on the beach and ate deep fried food and read that book, and smoked pot and walked on the beach and read that book. In those 2 weeks, I did nothing but read that book, smoke weed, and sit in these 2 rooms. But I wrote a book's worth of novelettes and short stories, and that's what She Kept the Bar Between Them is. It is Steve's reaction to coming back to Thailand the first time. And one of the stories in this book is called Necessary Things, and it's dramatized on my channel. James Newman and Roy Bott took the story and ran with it and made a short film using that story. So I probably won't read that story in this, but yeah, 33 minutes. Yeah, I'm going to stop now, and we'll start again with She Kept the Bar Between Them. As always, thank you very much, Maddie. I enjoy this. Can you see the sun is coming up? Yeah, let me see. Can we see the ocean? Ah, there it is. There's the ocean. Yeah, I'm going to go out and walk around out there and pick up trash. I'll see you later, bud.